The stars whisper goodbye. The starless void of space stretched endlessly, a canvas of emptiness broken only by the shimmering trail of the Xyliner, an advanced Exile-class spacecraft. Inside, Elara and Lyric, daughters of the High Ascendant Council of Xanthos, sat in tense silence. Their translucent skin glowed faintly under the ambient light, betraying emotions they'd been taught to suppress. "You think they'll remember us?" Lyric's voice was barely a whisper, a melody laced with sorrow and defiance. Elara didn't respond immediately. Her jade-green eyes, the hallmark of Xyanthian nobility, stared unblinking at the data screen displaying their destination, Earth. A primitive world, chaotic and untamed. To their society, it was a punishment worse than death. "They'll remember us as traitors," Elara finally replied, her tone sharp but cracking at the edges. "But we didn't betray them. They betrayed us." Their crime had been thought itself. Ideas of individuality and freedom clashed violently with the collective consciousness of Xanthos, a society where harmony was achieved through the suppression of self. Elara, always the firebrand, had dared to speak against the collective. Lyric, the softer of the two, had stood by her sister, unwilling to let her face the wrath of the council alone. The ship jolted as it began its descent through Earth's atmosphere, the hull glowing red with friction. "Brace yourselves," the ship's AI announced, its synthetic voice devoid of emotion. Flames licked the edges of the viewports, a fiery prelude to their new lives. With a deafening crash, the Xyliner burrowed into an open field, tearing through the earth and leaving a smoldering scar in its wake. Steam hissed as the landing ramp extended. Elara stepped out first, her figure framed by the glowing remnants of their ship. Lyric followed, her gaze darting nervously over the humans who had gathered, their faces lit by the eerie light of the crash. "What are they?" a voice whispered from the crowd, breaking the stunned silence. Elara's gaze swept over the humans. Their expressions of fear and wonder intrigued her. For a species labeled as primitive, their eyes held depths she hadn't expected. "Stay close," she murmured to Lyric, her protective instincts sharp. The crowd parted as a group of soldiers approached, their weapons raised but their postures uncertain. At their forefront was Colonel Jonathan Hayes, a middle-aged man with streaks of silver in his hair and a sharp, calculating gaze. "Identify yourselves," he ordered, his voice firm but not unkind. Elara raised her chin. "We are Elara and Lyric of Xanthos. We seek no conflict." Colonel Hayes hesitated before lowering his weapon. His hand gestured for the soldiers to do the same. "You've made quite an entrance," he said, his tone softening. "Welcome to Earth." The word "welcome" felt foreign to Elara, but Lyric smiled faintly. It was a beginning, however uncertain. As they were escorted to a waiting vehicle, Elara whispered to Lyric, "Do you feel it?" Lyric glanced at her sister. "Feel what?" "The air. The sounds. The freedom." Lyric didn't answer, but her heart quickened. Despite the danger and uncertainty, Earth held a raw, untamed promise that Xanthos never could. The first breath of freedom. The hum of the military convoy echoed through the quiet streets as Elara and Lyric sat in silence, their glowing eyes absorbing every detail of the alien world rushing past. The sharp tang of Earth's air was alive with unfamiliar scents, metal, asphalt, and something floral that neither could name. For sisters accustomed to the sterile perfection of Xanthos, the chaos was intoxicating. "What do you think they'll do with us?" Lyric's voice was soft, almost drowned out by the engine's rumble. Elara didn't answer immediately. Her gaze lingered on the humans outside, who peered curiously from behind curtains and doorways. "Study us. Fear us. Maybe even use us," she said finally. "But that doesn't mean we have to let them." Lyric sighed, her luminous blue eyes reflecting the city lights. "They don't seem as dangerous as we were told. They look curious." Curiosity, on Xanthos, was a suppressed trait, a distraction from collective unity. Here, It was everywhere, radiating from the humans like an untamed force. Lyric felt herself drawn to it. The convoy halted abruptly outside a towering concrete structure surrounded by floodlights and barbed wire. Soldiers ushered the sisters into a sterile corridor, where the air was heavy with disinfectant and tension. Colonel Hayes met them at the entrance, his stern expression tempered by a flicker of something softer, compassion, perhaps. "This is a secure facility," he explained as they walked. "We've set up accommodations for you here. It's not much, but it's safe." Elara smirked. "Safe for us or for you?" The colonel didn't flinch. "Both." They were led to a small room, stark white walls, 2 simple cots, and a narrow window barred with steel. The sisters exchanged glances. It was a far cry from the opulence of their homeworld, but it was tolerable. For now. As the door closed behind them, sealing them in, Elara paced the room like a caged predator. "They'll watch us, analyze us. We're nothing more than specimens to them." Lyric sat on one of the cots, her fingers tracing the coarse fabric of the blanket. "Perhaps they're trying to understand us. Isn't that what we wanted? To be seen as individuals." Elara stopped and looked at her sister, her frustration softening. "And what if they decide we're a threat? Do you think they'll grant us the freedom we sought?" Before Lyric could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. A young woman stepped inside, balancing a tray of food. She was small and nervous, her brown eyes darting between the sisters as if unsure whether to speak. "I brought this for you," she stammered, setting the tray on a small table. "It's, Earth food. I wasn't sure what you'd like." Lyric smiled, her expression warm and inviting. "Thank you. What's your name?" The woman blinked, clearly startled by the question. "Emily. Emily Carter." Lyric gestured to her sister. "I'm Lyric, and this is Elara." "It's nice to meet you, Emily." Emily managed a faint smile before scurrying out, leaving the sisters alone again. Lyric picked up a piece of bread from the tray, examining it curiously. "They're not all afraid of us," she said, taking a small bite. "Some are just trying." Elara crossed her arms, leaning against the wall. "Trying isn't enough. We can't afford to trust them." But as the hours turned into night, even Elara couldn't deny the flicker of something unfamiliar in the humans' actions, something Xanthos had long abandoned. Compassion. From their small window, the sisters watched the city lights twinkle against the inky sky. It wasn't home, but it pulsed with a strange energy, alive and unpolished. For the first time, Lyric felt the faint stirrings of hope. "We'll figure it out," she said quietly, her voice resolute. "This place, these people, they're different. Maybe different is exactly what we need." Elara said nothing, but she didn't look away. Somewhere in the chaos of this strange world, freedom was waiting. They just had to find it. The echo of old wounds. The dim light of dawn filtered through the narrow window of their room, casting soft shadows across the white walls. Elara stood at the window, her hands pressed against the cold glass as she watched the city wake. The humans moved with a rhythm both chaotic and mesmerizing, their individuality spilling into every movement and interaction. It was a stark contrast to the synchronized, deliberate existence on Xanthos. "Could you sleep?" Lyric asked from behind her, her voice laced with fatigue. She sat cross-legged on the cot, her silken hair glowing faintly in the morning light. Elara shook her head. "No. This place, it's too alive. I can feel it. The sounds, the smells, the emotions." She turned, her jade-green eyes narrowing. "It's unsettling." Lyric offered a soft smile. "Unsettling, maybe. But it's also freeing. For the first time, we're not bound by the expectations of others." Elara opened her mouth to respond but was interrupted by a knock at the door. Before they could answer, it swung open to reveal Colonel Hayes, flanked by 2 soldiers. His expression was unreadable, but there was a weight behind his eyes that hinted at news, good or bad, they couldn't yet tell. "We need to talk," he said simply, stepping inside. "We've been studying the data from your ship's systems. There are concerns." Ilara's stance stiffened, her instinctive distrust rising like a shield. "Concerns?" she echoed, her tone sharp. "You've been prying into our technology." Hayes met her glare without flinching. "We had to. It's protocol when dealing with extraterrestrial visitors. Your craft's logs indicate some sort of signal was sent before your crash landing. Can you explain that?" Ilara's jaw tightened, but Lyric stepped forward, her voice calm. "It wasn't intentional. Our ship's emergency protocols likely sent a distress beacon when we entered Earth's atmosphere. It's standard on Xyanthian vessels." Hayes nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That may be, but the signal's reach concerns us. It's possible others from your world know you're here." The room grew heavy with silence. Ilara's mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. If the Xyanthian Council had intercepted the signal, they wouldn't hesitate to act. Their punishment had been exile, but if they saw Earth as contaminated by the Sisters' ideals, the Council's response would be swift and deadly. Lyric spoke first, her voice steady but edged with worry. "If they come, they won't negotiate. They'll see this world as a threat to their collective. You need to be prepared." Hayes studied her carefully. "Prepared how?" Ilara's eyes burned with defiance. "By understanding that Xyanthos doesn't value life the way you do. If they come, they won't stop until this planet, and everything on it, is under their control." Hayes frowned, clearly processing the gravity of their words. "Then we'll need your help. You know their tactics, their strengths. If they're coming, we'll need to work together to defend Earth." Ilara crossed her arms, skepticism etched across her face. "And why should we help you? Your people see us as a threat. What makes you any different from them?" Hayes hesitated, then spoke with quiet conviction. "Because this is your chance to fight for the freedom you believe in. Isn't that why you came here? To escape the oppression of your world? Help us protect ours, and we can prove to you that freedom is worth fighting for." The weight of his words hung in the air. Lyric glanced at Ilara, her expression unreadable. "He's right," she said softly. "If we stand by and do nothing, we're no better than the Council." Ilara's fists clenched, but she gave a reluctant nod. "Fine. But if this goes sideways, don't expect us to sacrifice ourselves for your mistakes." Hayes gave a faint smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Understood." As he and the soldiers left the room, the sisters stood in tense silence. Lyric moved to the window, watching the sun climb higher over the horizon. "Do you think they'll come for us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ilara joined her, her gaze distant. "They won't come for us, Lyric. They'll come for this world. And when they do, we'll be ready." For the first time, a spark of determination flickered between them. They were no longer just exiles, they were warriors, bound not by duty to their world, but by the fragile hope that Earth could become a home worth protecting. Shadows of Xyanthos. The stillness of the night was broken by the low hum of alien machinery. Above the city, faint streaks of light danced like spectral whispers, traces of something vast and unyielding moving in the darkness. From their room, Ilara and Lyric watched the phenomenon with a growing sense of unease. The faint energy signatures were unmistakable. Their people had arrived. "They're here," Ilara said, her voice a quiet storm of anger and fear. Lyric's breath caught, her fingers clutching the edge of the windowsill. "It's too soon. How could they have responded so quickly?" "They must have been watching," Ilara replied, turning away from the window. "Or they anticipated we'd resist exile." The sisters didn't need to exchange further words, they knew what was coming. Xanthos never acted in half measures. Their world's strength came from absolute unity, and any threat to that unity, be it 2 exiles or an entire planet, was met with unrelenting force. A knock on the door snapped them from their thoughts. Colonel Hayes entered, his face grim. Behind him stood 2 soldiers, their postures tense. "We've detected unidentified crafts in Earth's orbit. They're not responding to our communications," he said. "I assume you know who they are." Elara crossed her arms, her expression hard. "They're Xanthine enforcers. Their job isn't to negotiate. It's to erase threats." Hayes' jaw tightened. "And by threats, you mean, us?" Lyric nodded, her voice somber. "All of you. The Council will see Earth as contaminated by our ideas. They'll attempt to neutralize the entire planet." A heavy silence filled the room as Hayes processed their words. Finally, he spoke, his tone resolute. "Then we'll fight. But we'll need every advantage we can get. Can you help us?" Elara's sharp gaze met his. "Help you? After everything your people have done to keep us locked away?" Lyric placed a calming hand on her sister's arm. "Elara, this isn't about us. It's about survival, for them and for us. If we don't fight, Earth will be lost." Elara's defiance wavered under Lyric's steady gaze. With a sigh, she nodded. "Fine. But if we're doing this, we're doing it on our terms. A plan against the collective." In the hours that followed, the sisters were brought to a heavily guarded military command center. Screens displayed a dizzying array of data, satellite images, energy readings, and the ominous signatures of the Xanthine fleet hovering just beyond Earth's atmosphere. The humans were scrambling, their technology impressive but primitive compared to the might of Xanthos. Elara and Lyric studied the data with focused intensity. "Their ships are cloaked in adaptive shields," Lyric explained, pointing to the faint outlines on the screen. "Your weapons won't penetrate them directly." Hayes frowned. "Then what do we do?" Elara's lips curved into a wry smile. "Xanthos relies on control. Their ship's shielding systems are centralized, tied to a primary node. Take that out, and their fleet is vulnerable." The room erupted into murmurs. One of the scientists, a young woman with wide eyes and trembling hands, spoke up. "But how do we find the node?" Lyric tapped a sequence into one of the computers, her alien knowledge weaving seamlessly with human technology. A schematic of the Xanthine fleet materialized on the screen. "It'll be heavily defended, but if we create enough distractions, we can force them to reveal it." Hayes nodded, his expression resolute. "We'll split our forces. Draw their attention while you locate the node. If this works, we'll stand a chance. A world unites." As plans were finalized, the sisters couldn't help but notice the humans' resolve. Despite their fear and limited resources, they refused to back down. Soldiers prepared their weapons, technicians calibrated their systems, and leaders coordinated strategies. It was a chaos born of individuality, a stark contrast to the collective perfection of Xanthos. Elara found herself unexpectedly moved by their determination. "They're nothing like us," she said quietly to Lyric. "And yet, they're willing to fight for each other, even knowing the odds." Lyric smiled faintly. "Maybe that's what makes them stronger than the Council ever realized." As dawn approached, the sisters joined Hayes and his team on the command deck. The air was thick with tension, but also with a spark of hope. The humans had no guarantees of victory, but they had something Xanthos lacked, an unshakable belief in the value of freedom. Elara tightened the straps of her borrowed combat gear. "Let's show them what it means to stand for something," she said, her voice steady. Lyric nodded, her gaze fierce. "For Earth. For us." As the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, the stage was set for a battle that would determine the fate of 2 worlds. The sisters had been cast out from their home, but in the defiant spirit of humanity, they saw the chance to reclaim not just their freedom, but their purpose. The first strike. The dawn sky erupted in fire and fury as Earth's forces launched their counterattack. Fighter jets screamed through the air, leaving trails of vapor behind, while anti-aircraft missiles arced upward, cutting through the clouds like blazing comets. The Xanthyan fleet, sleek and silent, descended with unnerving precision, their ships shimmering with an energy shield that defied Earth's most advanced weapons. Inside the command center, chaos reigned. Technicians barked orders, screens flickered with incoming data, and alarms wailed. Elara and Lyric stood amidst the whirlwind, their alien eyes scanning the tactical displays with an intensity born of desperation. "They're testing your defenses," Lyric observed, her voice calm despite the rising tension. "They'll strike in full force once they've mapped your vulnerabilities." Colonel Hayes turned to her, his expression a mix of determination and desperation. "Then tell us how to stop them." Elara stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You need to disrupt their coordination. Xanthyan ships operate as a hive, synchronized through a central command node. We disable that, and their fleet collapses." Hayes frowned. "And how do we do that?" Lyric tapped a control panel, bringing up a holographic representation of the Xanthyan fleet. "The node will be on their flagship. It's heavily shielded, but if we can get close enough, I can hack their systems and disable it." Hayes nodded, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll get you there. But you'll have to move fast. Into the fire." Elara and Lyric boarded a modified Earth shuttle, its hull reinforced with stolen Xanthyan tech salvaged from their crash. Hayes, piloting the craft himself, sat at the controls with a grim expression. The small crew on board included Lieutenant Mara Quinn, a sharp-eyed tactician, and Sergeant Noah Grant, whose calm demeanor belied his reputation as a fearless soldier. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and the craft shot into the sky, weaving through a storm of enemy fire. Outside, Earth's fighters engaged the Xanthyan ships, their weapons flashing like distant fireworks. The odds were daunting, but the humans fought with a ferocity that surprised even Elara. "They're relentless," Lyric murmured, watching the chaos unfold. "That's their strength," Elara replied. "They fight not because they're ordered to, but because they choose to." As they neared the Xanthyan flagship, the shuttle's shields flared under the impact of enemy fire. Hayes' voice crackled over the comms. "Brace yourselves. This is going to get rough." The craft dove sharply, dodging a barrage of plasma blasts. Elara and Lyric gripped their seats, their hearts pounding. When the shuttle leveled out, they found themselves in the shadow of the flagship, a massive, obsidian vessel that pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light. "There it is," Lyric said, her voice steady despite the tension. "The command node is just ahead. The breaking point." The shuttle latched onto the flagship's hull, its magnetic clamps securing it in place. The team disembarked, their boots clanging against the metallic surface. The sisters led the way, their movements swift and purposeful. Elara carried a plasma rifle scavenged from their own ship, while Lyric had a small device capable of interfacing with Xanthyan systems. Inside the ship, the air was thick with the hum of alien machinery. The walls seemed to pulse, alive with the rhythm of the hive mind. The team moved quickly, following Lyric's guidance as she navigated the labyrinthine corridors. "It's close," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Just beyond that door." As they approached the command node, the sound of approaching footsteps froze them in place. A squad of Xanthyan enforcers rounded the corner, their sleek armor glinting in the dim light. Without hesitation, Elara raised her weapon and fired, the plasma bolt striking true. The battle was swift and brutal, with the humans and sisters fighting side by side. "Go!" Elara shouted to Lyric as she took down another enforcer. "We'll hold them off." Lyric nodded, her determination unshaken. She sprinted toward the command node, the small device in her hand glowing with energy. The room was filled with a towering console, its surfaces alive with streams of alien data. Lyric worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls as she initiated the override sequence. Almost there, she muttered, her heart pounding. Behind her, the sounds of battle grew louder. Elara, Hayes, and the others fought with everything they had, their movements synchronized despite their differences. They were outnumbered, but their will to survive was unbreakable. Finally, the console emitted a sharp, piercing tone. Lyric stepped back, her device flashing green. "It's done," she shouted. "The node is down." The turning tide. The moment the node was disabled, the Xyanthian fleet faltered. Ships lost their coordination, their movements becoming erratic. Earth's forces seized the opportunity, launching a devastating counterattack that sent the once mighty fleet into retreat. On the flagship, Elara and the team regrouped with Lyric. Hayes placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression a mixture of relief and gratitude. "You did it," he said. "We all did." As they made their way back to the shuttle, Elara looked at her sister, a rare smile tugging at her lips. "You were right," she admitted. "Different isn't weak. It's strong." Lyric smiled back, her eyes shining. "And together, we're even stronger." As the shuttle departed the flagship, leaving the crumbling Xyanthian fleet behind, the sisters felt a strange sense of belonging. They had fought not just for survival, but for the freedom to be themselves, and for the first time, they felt like they'd found a home. Bonds forged in fire. The Earth's skies were quiet again, the remnants of the Xyanthian fleet scattered like ashes across the stars. But within the military base, the tension hadn't dissipated. Soldiers moved with purpose, repairing damaged systems and tending to the wounded. Victory had come, but it had left scars. In a quiet corner of the command center, Elara and Lyric sat side by side, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and relief. The sisters had faced battles before, but never one that had left them feeling so raw, and so connected to a people not their own. "I underestimated them," Elara admitted, her voice softer than Lyric had ever heard. "Their resilience, their chaos, it's powerful." Lyric nodded, her gaze fixed on a group of human engineers patching a damaged fighter. "They fight not because they're forced to, but because they believe in something. It's inspiring." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Colonel Hayes. He approached with a rare smile, his usually stern features softened. "I wanted to thank you both. We couldn't have done this without you." Elara smirked, though it lacked her usual edge. "We couldn't exactly let your world fall. We're stuck here, remember?" Hayes chuckled, but there was a seriousness in his eyes. "You're not stuck. You're part of something bigger now. You've earned your place here, if you want it." The weight of his words hung in the air. For the first time, the sisters felt like they weren't just exiles, they were allies, maybe even something more. A new purpose. As the sisters walked through the base, they couldn't help but notice how the humans interacted with them now. Soldiers nodded respectfully, engineers paused to offer thanks, and even the civilians who had once regarded them with suspicion now smiled in passing. "They see us differently," Lyric observed. "Like we're one of them." Elara glanced at her sister, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Maybe we are. Not by blood, but by choice." Their musings were interrupted when they were called to a meeting in the central briefing room. The room was filled with leaders from across Earth's nations, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and determination. Hayes addressed the room, his voice steady and commanding. "The Xyanthians may have retreated, but they won't stay away for long. They've seen what we're capable of, and they'll want revenge." A murmur spread through the room, but it was Elara who stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "Then you need to be ready. Xyanthos doesn't forgive defiance, and they won't hesitate to return with a stronger force." Hayes nodded. "Which is why we're asking for your help. You know their strategies, their weaknesses. With your guidance, we can build a defense strong enough to withstand whatever comes next. Elara and Lyric exchanged a glance. They had fought to protect this world, but the thought of staying to help rebuild it felt daunting. Yet, as they looked around the room, at the faces of people who had risked everything to defend their freedom, the choice became clear. "We'll help," Lyric said, her voice firm. "But we do this together. Not as leaders, not as soldiers, as equals." The room fell silent for a moment before Hayes extended his hand. "Agreed." The seeds of unity. In the weeks that followed, the sisters worked tirelessly alongside the humans to fortify Earth's defenses. Elara trained military personnel in Xyanthian combat techniques, her fiery determination inspiring those around her. Lyric, meanwhile, collaborated with Earth's scientists, integrating Xyanthian technology with human ingenuity to create new, hybrid systems. Their efforts didn't go unnoticed. The humans began to see the sisters not as outsiders, but as symbols of what could be achieved when differences were embraced. And for the first time, Elara and Lyric felt a sense of belonging that had eluded them on Xyanthos. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck overlooking the bustling base, Lyric turned to her sister. "Do you think this is what we were looking for? When we spoke out against the council, when we dreamed of something different, do you think this is it?" Elara's gaze lingered on the people below, their laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the silence of Xyanthos. "It's more than I imagined. They're flawed, unpredictable, but they're free. And I think that's worth fighting for. A new threat." But even as the sisters found their place among the humans, a shadow loomed on the horizon. Deep within the void, the remnants of the Xyanthian fleet had regrouped, their leaders furious at the humiliation they'd suffered. The council's emissaries, cold and unyielding, spoke with venomous resolve. "Earth has defied us. The sisters have betrayed us. We cannot allow this to stand." Plans were set in motion, fleets assembled. This time, there would be no hesitation, no mercy. Earth had become a symbol of defiance, and the council intended to snuff out that flame before it could spread. On Earth, Elara and Lyric felt the distant tremors of Xyanthos' wrath. They stood together, their resolve unshaken. "They're coming," Elara said, her voice firm. Lyric nodded, her eyes alight with determination. "Then we'll be ready." As the first stars of night glimmered above, the sisters prepared for the battle to come, not just for Earth's survival, but for the future of every world that dared to dream of freedom. The final stand. The sky was a tapestry of fire and shadow as the Xyanthian armada descended upon Earth. Their ships, massive and obsidian, moved like predators through the void, eclipsing the stars. On the ground, every city was alive with preparation, sirens wailed, soldiers rallied, and civilians sought shelter. It was a moment of fragile unity, a species banding together against a force that sought to erase them. At the heart of the chaos, Elara and Lyric stood in the command center, their faces illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. Earth's leaders surrounded them, their expressions grim but resolute. This time, the humans weren't fighting alone. They had the sisters, two exiles who had become symbols of hope in humanity's darkest hour. "They'll hit us hard and fast," Elara said, pointing to the holographic display of the fleet. "They've learned from their mistakes. Their goal isn't just to subdue, it's annihilation." Lyric nodded, her voice steady. "But they underestimate us. They think chaos is a weakness, but here, it's strength. We can use that to our advantage." Colonel Hayes stepped forward, his tone firm. "What's the plan?" The heart of the battle. The sisters outlined their strategy, a bold and unorthodox plan that combined Xyanthian precision with human ingenuity. Earth's forces would split into 3 coordinated fronts, a ground defense to protect the cities, a diversionary fleet to draw the Xyanthians' attention, and a strike team to infiltrate the enemy flagship and disable their central command system. Elara volunteered to lead the strike team. "If we cut off their control, the rest of their fleet will falter. It's our best chance. Lyric insisted on joining her. You'll need me to interface with their systems. Besides, we started this together. We'll finish it the same way. The decision was made, and within hours, the teams were in motion. The sisters boarded a stealth shuttle with Colonel Hayes and a small squad of Earth's elite soldiers. The atmosphere was tense but electric with determination. Each of them knew the odds, but they also knew what was at stake. The shuttle launched into the chaos of battle, weaving through a storm of plasma fire and explosions. Outside, Earth's fighters engaged the Xyanthian ships in a desperate dance of survival. The sky burned with the clash of two worlds. Into the lion's den. The stealth shuttle docked on the Xyanthian flagship under the cover of the diversionary fleet's assault. Elara led the team through the dark, pulsating corridors of the ship, her plasma rifle at the ready. The walls seemed alive, glowing faintly with the energy of the hive mind. Lyric paused at a console, her fingers flying over its surface. The command hub is just ahead, she whispered. But the defenses are active. We'll need to disable them before we can proceed. Hayes gestured to his team. Cover her. We'll hold off any reinforcements. As Lyric worked, the team faced wave after wave of Xyanthian enforcers. The air was filled with the whine of plasma fire and the clash of alien weaponry against human grit. Elara fought with a ferocity that left even Hayes in awe, her movements precise and unrelenting. Almost there. Lyric called out, her voice strained but focused. Elara gritted her teeth as another wave of enforcers approached. Make it fast, Lyric. We're running out of time. With a final keystroke, Lyric deactivated the ship's defenses. The door to the command hub slid open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with pulsating energy conduits. At its center was the Xyanthian control core, a massive, crystalline structure glowing with an unnatural light. A choice to make. Lyric approached the core, her device ready to interface. But as she began the process, a holographic figure materialized before them, the Council's emissary, a cold, imposing figure whose voice echoed with authority. Traitors, the emissary hissed. You dare defy the will of Xyanthos? You have condemned yourselves and this primitive world. Elara raised her weapon, her emerald eyes blazing. Your will is nothing but control. We found something stronger, freedom. The emissary's gaze shifted to Lyric. And you? Will you destroy the only connection to your people? Will you sever the bond that makes you whole? Lyric hesitated, her hand hovering over the interface. The weight of the choice bore down on her. Destroying the core would save Earth, but it would also mean cutting herself and her sister off from Xyanthos forever. There would be no going back. Elara stepped beside her, her voice low but steady. Lyric, this isn't about them anymore. It's about us, about what we found here. Lyric met her sister's gaze, and in that moment, her resolve solidified. For Earth. For freedom. She activated the device. The control core erupted in a cascade of energy, the hive mind collapsing as the ship trembled violently. Alarms blared, and the team sprinted back to the shuttle as the flagship began to disintegrate. A new dawn. The Xyanthian fleet, now fragmented and leaderless, retreated into the void. On Earth, the skies cleared, revealing a battered but unbroken world. Cheers erupted across the planet as news of the victory spread. Against all odds, humanity had prevailed. Back at the base, Elara and Lyric stood together, watching the sunrise. The light bathed the ruins and rubble, but it also illuminated the faces of people rebuilding, laughing, and embracing. We did it, Lyric said, her voice filled with quiet wonder. They fought for their world, and now it's ours too. Elara nodded, a rare smile gracing her lips. This is what we were looking for, Lyric. Not just freedom, but purpose. Colonel Hayes approached, his expression one of gratitude. You've given us more than victory. You've given us hope. Elara extended her hand, a gesture she'd once resisted. Hayes clasped it firmly. No, she said. You gave it to us. As the first rays of sunlight painted the sky, the sisters knew their journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, but they would face them together, as allies, as warriors, and as part of a world where they had finally found a home.